feeling like I'm academics.
Big not interesting, but big news coming down is that the judge has ruled that David will stand trial. Now, remember, I told you that David wasn't at trial yet. He was going to a preliminary hearing. The preliminary hearing is what determines if you're going to go to trial. The judge makes the ultimate determination. Difference, I keep pointing out these things. Difference between a preliminary hearing and usually what we see with the grand jury. A grand jury secret. Preliminary hearing is usually an open court. But at least you get your defense lawyer there to kind of at least like throw some scud missiles to try to say, oh, that's your probable cause? Nah, here's the reason why that looks that way. And maybe you could sway a judge to say, nah, that's not enough. Like that probable cause isn't strong enough to go to court or go to trial. However, the judge has ruled today that David will indeed stand trial for the murder of Celeste Rivas. But there's a lot more information that did come through. We get to find out that the family of Celeste, remember I said, why are they so quiet? Like your daughter was missing all this time and no one, like you're not. Apparently they knew her daughter or their daughter was with this guy. Apparently they all went to church together. And it now makes sense why when she would go missing, they wouldn't immediately call the cops. When your 13-year-old goes missing, you don't call the cops. That's a problem. But now it brings up another issue. If you are the parents of Celeste and your daughter goes missing or is dating some guy who's 19, how much are you complicit in the whole thing? Now it kind of makes sense where like at first it didn't feel like his parents were like, I want to like, no disrespect. I want to see the video of his parents crying, of her parents crying like, oh my God, my beautiful baby girl. I can't believe whatever happens to her. And we need to get justice. They were really quiet. And we're starting to realize, and by the way, they also retain an attorney, but that's not too out of the ordinary because usually victims, like even Nolan Wells' family, they have an attorney. That's Ben Crump. But what we got to find out, we're like, why are they so quiet when their child has gone missing? We're getting to realize maybe they should be at fault a little bit too. Okay, if you hand your 13-year-old over to a 19-year-old, or you know that they're dating and you look the other way. Maybe for financial benefits, maybe for other things, maybe because he's a superstar or whatever. What blame do you get? And we're getting to find out that they were well aware of the relationship. Both parents of David and also Celeste, they were all aware of the relationship. They should have known it was inappropriate. And if anything, they did group activities with both of them together. Like, for example, going to church. Celeste's parents would go to church with their daughter, and they would allow David to come. So it's clear that they knew that they were dating their daughter. Anyway, let me go into this. And by the way, also, they exposed the text messages that came out right before her death. And apparently these text messages were really intense. Now, I'm going to play a longer video. Obviously, we're going to get Trap Lore in here, and he could break it down a little bit more. But apparently Celeste, even though at a young age, she was really jealous. And she was jealous of another girl that he was also like frequenting and hanging around. Her name was like Asia or something of the sort. And what would happen is that she would send really these crash out messages saying, hey, listen, y'all cut your dick off. I'll fucking kill you if you keep like entertaining this chick. And she was really jealous. She would threaten to destroy his career. You know what? She'd be like, hey, listen, y'all, I'll fuck this all up. So it kind of shows she was cognizant that the overarching thing is that what they were doing wasn't really legal, right? It's not even wasn't really legal. It wasn't legal at all. But she knew how to use it against him. And the prosecutors have presented this as motive to say not only maybe looming pregnancy concerns, but also her constantly threatening to ruin his career or ruin his life. That may have been the thing that got him to snap and kill her. All right. Also, the attorney spoke, but let me get to Trap Lore Ross, who's going to break this down a little bit better. Here we go. He's been in court. By the way, I want to say thank you to Trap Lore Ross. He's taken some of our advice. I said he should do disclaimers, and he is hold on. Yeah, he's done disclaimers, and he's going to keep doing disclaimers. Okay, cool. Here we go. All right. Well, you say it was bad. What?
All right, folks, so I'm here once again out. Celeste had shared that was played in court. Obviously, it's completely against the guidelines. I simply told you guys everything that I heard in the courtroom. I dumbed it down. I was careful about what I said. I didn't say anything outrageous or offensive or completely graphic, anything like that. I just let you guys know what was said in court. And I'm just so disappointed that YouTube has made that decision.
Okay, so YouTube gave him a strike or something like that. Because here's the thing when you're talking about sensitive subjects, these automated bots and flags, they don't know if like you're trying to encourage people to get into inappropriate relationships. They don't know if you're trying to like hype it up. But yeah, they gave him a strike, and now he does a disclaimer. This is a disclaimer.
Public and raise awareness of the...
Here we go.
Before I show you today's courthouse video, I need to tell you something so YouTube doesn't punish me. I categorically condemn David's actions and all predatory behavior involving children or adults. This video is educational, documentary, scientific, and artistic content. More specifically, authoritative reporting on a true crime case from a journalistic context. I've personally attended the David preliminary hearings as an accredited reporter, and I'm here to tell you the facts of the case. I'm doing this to inform and protect the public and raise awareness of the tactics and methods used by predators. This video includes no content that violates the advertiser or community guidelines on YouTube, and the purpose of this video is to add context and condemnation to a story in the public interest and to protect the public. I will be reporting basic factual information that I've personally observed while attending the court proceedings as a professional journalist. While this video contains multiple points of view, including the defense attorney's arguments, I hold...
Did ChatGPT write this one? This is a pretty professional, disclaimer.
Wholeheartedly condemn David, his actions, and the actions of any groomer or predator. I'm obliged by YouTube's rules to tell you that you should not imitate the actions of David, and this statement represents a clear and informative discouragement against imitating dangerous or harmful behavior. This video doesn't include any illegal material, instructions on how to carry out a crime, any footage of a criminal or victim while a crime is being committed, and this video categorically does not intend to glorify the crimes or criminals being discussed. I hope that's understood. Now here's the video. Okay, it's official. David just lost in court. He lost, he took the L. He will be facing all of these charges. He will be facing a trial. He is going to be arraigned at the end of August, and he will then have to make an official plea on these charges because what I'm hearing, the grand jury didn't charge him. That's why we had this probable cause hearing. 5-day preliminary hearing in the end. It was absolutely intense. It was a lot. Okay, it was.
And yes, they did he has to stand accountable for all the charges. So there's several, I forgot all of them, but there was no charge. They were like, nah, not that one. All of them. So he basically got, it was a sweep.
It was actually a lot in the end. A lot went down. 5 days worth of testimony, witnesses, back-to-back witnesses, and he got cooked. He lost, all right? Now, I've got all of my notes here. I'm going to be really careful about what I say to you guys.
By the way, also, it's unrealistic that he was gonna win anything on a probable cause hearing. So, I think he had to prepare that he's going to go to trial eventually.
Patreon on my free family lawyer for the civil suit. So I'll have probably uploaded that video for what I say. But I do think that, to be honest, I will friends with Asia. Mental, all right?
Here we go. Here's the stuff.
The day before Celeste was allegedly murdered, Celeste messaged David, said, but can you tell me why you want to be friends with Asia? Mental, all right? David replied, basically saying she was a friend of his, and she apparently replied, we didn't see what David's response regarding Asia was. We didn't see that. We just saw Celeste basically being very jealous. Admittedly, she was clearly a jealous lover. You shouldn't be in love with a child that's she got the maturity of a 14-year-old because she was a 14-year-old, all right? It's not really a surprise there. But basically, she then followed up, said, bro, just jump into her. There's no need for friendship. Keep her as an acquaintance like Lane Cooperstein or Rob Morganroth. So Asia, Lane, and Rob all came up in a back-to-back triple combo, which I could not believe. It was like the Avengers of despicable people who have acted like they had nothing to do with this. Well, Celeste knew who all three of you were. And she knew about your friendships. She said, just bump into her. Just bump into Asia. No need for friendships. Just keep her as an acquaintance like Lane or Rob. Are you kidding me? What are you talking about? What on earth? So after that, we basically saw Celeste followed that up by saying, and you're really saying you'd end our friendship just to be friends with her, talking about Asia, over me. And then she said, that's disturbing and disgusting to me on a deeper level. So after that, David replied and said, when did I say I'd end my friendship with her for you? And then Celeste replied, someone who's known you for years over someone who knows you for 1 year. I didn't want to be friends with you if you still want to be friends with her. So Celeste was jealous of Asia. That's now been proven. Okay. The day before David allegedly murdered her, she basically was kind of like going back and forth with David, calling him out. I'll admit, I don't know if Asia had knowledge of Celeste's feelings towards her. The jealousy, these allegations, I don't know to what extent Asia was aware. But Celeste was aware of Asia and she was jealous of her. And she was suspicious of David's relationship. She said, keep her as an acquaintance like Lane or Rob. She was aware of Lane. So this idea, people were talking about, there's a rumor going around that Celeste might have been staying with Lane when she wasn't at the main house with David. Rob was mentioned. So Celeste knows who Lane and Rob are. The fact that this little girl who David was messing with, that you're all going to deny having anything to do with, she knew who you lot were. That's damning, to be honest with you. So anyway, all right, as Celeste said, she said, oh, I've known you for years. You've only known Asia for 1 year. You should be friends with me. That was crazy. Celeste basically went on to say, why was she at your house then? And David was like, at my house when? She said the address of the other house. I guess he still had it. And David was like, oh, well, for Coachella, everybody came to get wristbands. So she came over for a reason, basically. There was a good reason.
Yeah, that's crazy. This nigga's explained himself to a 13-year-old, bro. This guy's a sick guy, bro. And the crazy thing is, you know, I seen someone make the point or ask the question, how did he have so much money? Like, people really sleep on the fact of, hold on, let me pull this up. Okay, if we go to Spotify and let's go to artists. Okay. And where can we search? There's a search bar somewhere. There's a search bar. Actually, we could probably just search here. D4. Yeah. Like, he wasn't the biggest artist, but like, he's not like some small artist, you know, whatever. Like, to compare his numbers, you know, obviously he had a big upside. He's right by Baby Keem. Actually, his numbers is better than Baby Keem. Respectfully, I don't know if you guys can see it. So he's ranked, and this ranks all the artists. And he's 530. Baby Keem is 531. Now, this is about streams, and streams in the millions. So, you know, this Drake has 1.38 billion. And when it comes to this David kid, he has 6.5 billion, which is even more than Baby Keem, which is also at 6.5. So just to put in perspective of people say, damn, how did he have like this? Because it was reported that his contract could have been worth up to $18, $19 million. Well, if this guy has a lane to himself, has a niche following, his music has the potential to get bigger and bigger. Yeah, these record labels, you know, Interscope specifically, they were definitely heavily invested in him. So I know people don't really, they're going off, oh, I never heard of him, but you've heard of Baby Keem, and objectively looked like he was a bigger artist than Baby Keem. Respectfully. By streams. Not saying overall, by streams. Which that's what record labels care about a lot.
Reason that she came over.
Okay.
And this is where it got crazy, all right?
And the reason why I said that is that this is why this guy is also incredibly sick, is like, this guy clearly, he has passes to go to Coachella. I don't know if he ever performed at Coachella. We could probably look it up now. But you know, Coachella has all the baddest bitches that are in their 20s. Like, my nigga, why are you caring about a 13-year-old, bro? Okay. Did David ever perform at Coachella? And the answer, yes, he performed there in April 2025. Wow. Here's the Instagram. Oh, wow. Look. Suppose he went viral. He tried to do a backflip and fell. Ooh. Oh, no, he didn't fall.
Say 1, 2, 3, ready?
All right.
So what? So what? I just love the way.
Wow. Interesting.
Talked about this in a short earlier, but Celeste then threatened to kill David. I'll keep it real. Look, it's bad, it's damning, but that's what happened. So Celeste basically said, oh my effing God, I swear to God, I will kill you. She was in my seat. I think she's talking about maybe seeing Asia, like, sat in the seat of the Tesla that Celeste usually sits in, or perhaps maybe there's a seat in the house that's usually reserved for Celeste that Asia was in, but she was jealous. She said, I will kill you. I will strangle you and tell my dad so many lies and do so much damage to you and end your career. That's crazy, okay? Doesn't mean she deserves to die. This is a 13-year-old wilding out. How many 13-year-olds have said, I'm going to kill you before? This is a kid. So I don't care. A lot of people are now saying, oh my God, she threatened to kill him, self-defense. Nonsense. Ain't no self-defense. This was a kid. This is a kid that was just wilding out, talking rubbish, talking nonsense. Doesn't matter. Not self-defense, but obviously it was bad. But really that just says to me the lengths that David had actually pushed this minor to. She was so frustrated with him that she was talking about she wanted to kill him. So she went on to basically say, she posted at your house, you weirdo. And then on the day of the murder, they continued talking to each other. They talked about seeing each other. He sent an Uber. David said to her, are you coming at 9 or is it too early or late for you? Celeste said, I said I can go whenever. David basically leaned forward and stared at the screen. While these messages were going on, David was locked in. Now, after that, Celeste said, what you mean, leave at 9 or get there at 9? David said, leave at 9. Celeste said, actually, yeah, or I can be in Riverside for it too if you want. She went on to say, by the way, is it chill if you get the Uber for me at 8:30? I'll be back in Lake Elsinore. It's hard to get Ubers there. And then later on, David said, so get it to your house or down the street or something. And Celeste said, let me check. She sent him an address that I won't read to you. And she basically, David went on to say, why do I have to show you everything I get? And Celeste said, because you had because she didn't say this. I don't want to say it. I've got to be careful what I say. But she basically, to the effect, said, he said, why do I have to show you everything I get? And Celeste said, basically, because you made me, I was expecting because of you at a certain point. All right? So after that, now this was...
So that kind of confirms that he did get her pregnant.
Interesting. Celeste kept calling David like queen and girl, and I think she was trolling him, and I think she low-key was like bullying him, like, you know what I'm saying, head under the arm, ruffling his head. Like, she was just like, she was dog walking him at some point. She was like, get my Uber, queen. Like, he was calling her, she was calling him queen and low-key making a mockery of him. And I just thought that was quite funny, and she actually clearly had a sense of humor, and she was sort of still roasting this fool right to the bitter end. So the address was shared. I won't tell you the address, but the address was the address. It was what it was.
Was it down the road? I'm guessing it was.
And then basically they went back and forth. David saying 4 minutes, 1 minute. Okay, he's there. And she's saying, okay. And then while she's in the car, as we heard before, basically she was calling him queen. Then she said girly pop. She was calling him girly pop, which was hilarious. She said, girly pop, I'm almost at your door if you're home. He replied, got you, gate open, door unlocked. He didn't say, I'm going to open the door. He said, gate open, door unlocked. Now that's something that the defense were trying to rely on later, basically saying like, oh, you know, he didn't say he was there. He didn't even say that he was there. Like, how do you know he was there? He didn't even say that he was there. And it's like, gate open, door unlocked. Like, bruv, come on, he was there. And the cell tower suggested that he was in the vicinity of his own home. This is when the alleged lies began. So this is when David basically said around 10:31 p.m. And here's the thing: she arrived to the car at She arrived to his house allegedly at 10:10, and that's when David said gate open, door unlocked. All right, when she said I'm almost here, 7 minutes before that. And then at 10:33, all right, David says Uber said you're here. Where you're at? Hello, bro, Celeste. And after that last message from Celeste, where she said, this is so sad. But the last thing she ever sent was girly pop, I'm almost at your door, open if you're home. She never sends a message ever again in history. The girl she never ever sends any message. That's the last message she ever sent in her whole life. All right. And you want to believe that because David's going, where are you at? Hello, bro, Celeste, where you at? And then she apparently this is like 10:33, 10:36. And then there's no messages from Celeste ever after 11 p.m. And then basically, David then messages her at like 11:30, says, bro, blocking me? Hello? Bro, I'm going to call you, bro. You're scaring me. He was lying. So, allegedly. So it
sounded like he had killed her already, but he was trying to kind of stage the messages that, oh no, maybe she left and she was mad, and I was trying to get up with her, but I don't know where she went.
11:41, he's saying, dude, what the F? Where are you, please? And then he never texts her ever again. She never sends a text ever again after that. It's over with at this point. It's completely over with at this point. So basically, the detective made it clear he reviewed the Uber records. The victim did arrive at the property at 10:10 p.m. And then at 11:30 p.m., and bear in mind, he's texting while this is going on, but 11:30 p.m., his cell phone and his Tesla begin moving north towards Santa Barbara. So interestingly enough, okay, they revealed something that we already knew, but this was all while David was planning the rollout for his album, Withered, which obviously is just a ridiculous name, considering what ended up happening. Now, it could have been a coincidence, or it could have indicated some premeditation. I'm not entirely sure, but at the end of the day, he basically had a bunch of album stuff to deal with after that. Funnily enough, actually, he had been at a meeting with Interscope that day about his album rollout. Now, we ended up seeing all of these locations in his Tesla infotainment. He drove up to Santa Barbara, all of that kind of stuff. And this is where the cross-examination took place. So Blair took the stand, not took the stand, but Blair took the podium and begun continuing to question this detective who was continuing on from the previous day's testimony. And she basically got to blaming Celeste, painting David as a victim, painting David as somehow kind of like being a victim in all this. I'm going to get to it, but she painted out David to be such a bitch, and that David was basically like a victim in all this, and like he did what he's supposed to do kind of vibe that she was giving, and blamed the family. So the first thing that Blair Burke said was basically the first contact with David and Celeste on iMessage was August 2020, right? So that was confirmed. She said that was online text messaging, right? When did they first meet in person? They said they first met in person in November 2023, right? They said first communication with Celeste. What was the first message? So apparently the first message, or within the first couple of messages that David and Celeste actually shared, Celeste asked David his age, and apparently he said 18. Now this is what's crazy, okay? And I would say that Beth Silverman looked a little bit flustered and a little bit like, just a little bit pissed off at this line, just this general line of questioning. I was pissed off too, because I feel like the line that you could see the avenues they were going down, and it was not pretty, it was not cool. So after that, all right, basically, there was kind of a back and forth, and Beth objected and said, these are like random iMessages. These aren't the extraction from Cellbrite. And then Blair was basically telling the detective, didn't you review these messages? And he was like, oh, I can't really remember. I've reviewed so many messages. He could only remember the ones that the prosecution had put in front of him. For a moment, it almost looked a little bit like, oh, okay, this is going to be a W in his favor. But then it's like the detective kind of was just locked in and started answering the questions. And it was like, cool. These are iMessage from David's. Look, these are the Cellbrite. It was unclear to me, but basically there was a whole back and forth about where the detective was basically like, we got all these messages from a Cellbrite extraction. I can't remember all of them. If you're asking me about specific ones, you're going to have to show me. And then Blair basically produced a bunch of messages that were apparently sympathetic towards David, that she then showed the detective one by one, and Beth made sure to kind of like oversee that and make sure what was being shown was legit. But anyway, once we moved on to that, okay, they said in the first message between David and Celeste, where Celeste asked David his age, they said David told Celeste he was 17. And the detective was like, well, I don't remember. He might have. They said, well, you admitted Friday that when they first spoke, he was 17. So the first thing they were going for was like this thing that like he was a minor too. I'm going to lean up against this. I think it'll be more comfortable. You want to just jump in there? Thank you. So like this idea that like, oh, he was a minor too, that was sort of where how they were framing it to begin with, to say when they first spoke, he was 17 too. After that, they basically talked about their birthdays. They kind of went back and forth about all the details. They identified David's birthday. It was weird. I don't know if this was a mistake, but I'm pretty sure they said David's birthday was March the 5th, 2005. And I thought I read on Google it was March the 28th. Maybe Google's wrong. I'm more inclined to believe his lawyer, or maybe she misspoke. But anyway, they said, fair to say, out of hundreds of messages you reviewed, you focused on their ages, right? Because when the previous testimony was being given, we constantly heard Beth Silverman pausing and saying, and just remind us, how old was Celeste and David during these messages? And it was always, she's 13, he's 18, over and over and over and over and over again, okay? So from there, basically they said you looked at tens, hundreds, thousands of messages, hundreds of thousands of messages, and you focused in what was said. So they said on the first message they ever spoke, David told Celeste he was 17, and what did Celeste reply? And this was a bit of a bombshell. David said he was 17, Celeste said, I'm 16. Now, Beth objected to that. There was a little bit of tension. Blair had to rephrase the same question, but she got the same answer, yes. Okay. So when they first spoke, admittedly, all right, and this worked in David's favor, David was 17 and Celeste had said she was 16. Now, they claimed that over the...
So they're going with the angle of she, you know, and they're probably going with this angle trying to make it not look so like such a depraved crime. So they're like, well, she told him she was around the same age as him. And also they had to go back to when they first met, because now you then put his age under 18, right? So now he's like, oh, well, he was a minor, she's a minor, you know?
the course of 2022, 2023, Celeste actually changed her story and told David that she was 18. Now, after that, okay, Blair would introduce various messages that actually came from the 22nd of April, 2025, the day before the alleged murder. So basically, she kind of established when they first started talking, they were both minors. All right, fine. And that she had lied about her age. Okay, fine. Doesn't change the fact this is a statutory offense. She could say she's 80 years old. It doesn't matter, because if you abused her and you did the business, you are a criminal. There is no... I thought that it doesn't need malice or intent from what I understand for these charges. But anyway, from there, okay, Blair Burke would introduce a bunch of messages that were apparently sent either basically the day before they ended up meeting up. And this was pretty crazy, okay? They reviewed that same message that we'd already heard from the prosecution, where Celeste had said, oh my God, I'll kill you, I'll strangle you to death, I'll tell my dad so many lies, I'll injure your career, life, and damage you. Now, this is what was very, very interesting. So after that, I can't actually tell you this message. She said, I will straight up mutilate something of David's that's very sensitive. That's all I'm going to say. So basically, David replied, he said, you've turned this into a bigger thing than this conversation. And now, I'm not going to lie to you, it wasn't really even brought attention to, but that sentence was very ominous to me, and I felt like that was the message where he decided to kill her. That's just my opinion, all right, allegedly. But David replied when she said she would mutilate part of him, David said, you've turned this into a bigger thing than this conversation. What bigger thing? What? Murder? Violence? I think that's when he decided, but you guys be the judge of that. And obviously the jury will really be the judge of that, as well as the judge. But anyway, I digress. David says, this is how it goes with you. You have to find out after the fact that you do not listen to me. That didn't really make sense to me. But anyway, Celeste replied, said, nah, I don't even play like that. I'll dead go to Val's door on some crazy shit, knocking and crying. Now, anyway, I'll just move on from there, okay? You can do your own research. And then Blair basically went on to say there were 1,200 messages that were sent between Celeste and David on the 2 days before the murder. David basically said, why do you think...
1,200 is crazy.
Why do you think you proved my exact point? Celeste said, you have one more chance to tell me the truth. She said, tell me the truth, David. I need to see you tonight. Tell me the truth. Now, bear in mind, the context of this all started, they're talking about Asia. So I don't know if this was other girls, if it's specifically about Asia. I don't know what was going on with that. But basically, it was like, you need to tell me the truth. You need to tell me what's going on. Now, a little bit of time passes. David said, So, okay, David said, how are you going to feel distant? How are you going to say you feel distant? You pushed me away from the start of the year. Celeste said, if I see you and Asia hanging out, I'll make an anonymous account leaking all of the stuff I have on you. Again.
So it was kind of crossing over into blackmail a bit. Now, granted, obviously, there's just so much wrong. We're not also condoning that either, right? Like, you know, a chick blackmailing you, but again, you shouldn't even be dating her, right? Like, you know, obviously if I'm talking about blackmail, I'm talking about if you're dating an actual woman who is not underage. But like, say you had a secret, if a woman or a man is gonna blackmail you, that's not cool. But again, David knew the bet he made. He's dating a minor, he's doing things that are highly illegal, and he's doing that and then playing with this person that they get emotional, and they're probably figuring out like, well, what the fuck could I do to get him back?
Doesn't mean she deserved to die, but she was cooking him. She was ready to expose him. She made it very clear that just because someone's going to expose you for being a PDF-related file, you don't have the right to kill them. That's no self-defense. This just provided a motive, and I personally feel like accidentally Blair Burke actually provided a lot of ammunition and motive. Because realistically, reading that, it's kind of like, well, it sounds like she gave him no choice, but as far as he was thinking about it, from the perspective of someone willing to murder to protect their career and finances, like, she had taken it there, so he was willing to take it there. Anyway, she basically, Celeste continued threatening him. It was crazy. She said,
I still don't think it was fully premeditated. I'll give you my theory. And remember, my theory is just thinking about just like this is crime. I get it. She's underage and we want to be sensitive. That's my disclaimer. But if you had planned to kill her, why invite her to your house? You know, at some point she's going to be missing and they're going to go search your house. Hear what I'm trying to say. Why not kill her somewhere else? You know what I'm saying? Or maybe he thought he could have enough privacy in his house. Also, I don't know, the wounds that she got that I believe is the fatal wounds, which is the cuts and the stabs. You know, stabbing to me always comes across as in the moment, heat of passion, like, you know, like an emotional reaction, a violent one that is clearly, rather than, oh, this is what I plan to do. Do you get what I'm saying? So I'm thinking they're beefing, they're arguing. She comes over, you know, she's probably a little slick with the mouth pause, and she's probably saying, yo, listen, I'm going to ruin you. Your career is done. You're not going on tour. You're not selling another album. They're going to call you a creep. You're fucking da-da-da. And I'm pretty sure they get into it, and somehow it gets there. But I could be wrong, too, because even then, if you're arguing with your girl, like, who thinks about going to get a knife to stab him? That's weird. So I don't know. Maybe it is premeditated. So I don't want to rule that out. But I was thinking that maybe it wasn't. But nothing of this situation makes sense.
and I have all the old numbers from my phone printed out, including your mum, so I can contact her if anything. Oh, no, sorry. I can contact her anytime, lol. David said, okay, with a laughing emoji. And then she went on to say, I also have somebody's fiance on my phone, so I could text her. It will spread to your work girl. I don't know who that was. Well, I heard the name. It wasn't a name I'd ever heard before. I'm not going to say whom, but yeah. So Celeste said she had spread to your work girl. So really it sounds like she had connections and phone numbers and contacts to the people involved in his career. So basically, apparently, there were threats constantly back and forth. Blair basically said there were hundreds and thousands of texts between them, a lot of threats, a whole bunch of Celeste basically making threats. And Blair basically pointed out of the hundreds and the thousands of texts, did Celeste ever say specifically about participating in a criminal prosecution? And the detective admitted she never talked about testifying or taking it to the cops. She just talked about taking it public. Now, we found out at the end when the judge made the ruling, that doesn't frickin' matter. Doesn't matter. Doesn't have to be take it to the cops. It can just be, I'm going to expose you. That was enough for the special circumstances. The cops would have liked her to be a witness, but it doesn't mean that they needed an investigation or for her to willingly be saying, I'm going to testify.
Okay, so part of the special circumstances is like witness tampering. Obviously, you killed the witness, you know, but they're looking at that for if they were going to prosecute him on child sex charges, she would have been a potential witness, and he ended up killing her, so that's why he called those charges. And the judge is saying, yeah, even if she didn't specifically say she was going to go to the cops, clearly her saying she wanted to go public, she was down to be a witness.
In this upcoming trial that hasn't happened yet, okay? So that didn't help. But that was one of the many straws they can continue to clutch at. So after that, basically, like, Blair said, just reiterated, like, she threatened to kill him, to call his mom, to leak stuff, threaten him, but she never once mentioned going to the police. Now, the last threat apparently came. I don't know if it was a threat, but anyway, David has said, I know you ended the... David basically said, I know you ended the friendship like 10 times. And then David said, when are you coming to mine? Are you going to want food? I'm going to be hungry at the end of the day. She says, sure, what kind, girl? So she's still roasting him, calling him girl and shit, which is quite funny. She's like, yeah, what time, girl? What kind, girl? What kind of food? And David said, In-N-Out, and she said, K. And they tried to present this like, look, he wouldn't murder her. He offered her In-N-Out. You couldn't possibly give someone an In-N-Out to, entice them into a sense of security and then murder them. Surely not, right? That was absurd. Like the idea that like, look, come on, man. Like if I'm going to go and catch a body, as long as I buy someone in and out beforehand, I guess that's just fine. That's just fair play, is it? That was ridiculous. But from there, Blair basically went on to say, this is where she started putting the blame on the family. And I really didn't like this. And to be honest, this made me think, oh, okay. So that message that was going around yesterday that was supposedly from a neighbor, that probably had been leaked out there with coordination from the defense, because suddenly a lot of things in that neighbor's message matched up with things that Blair was saying that nobody should have known about. And I'm still skeptical. A lot of people are going to be coming out of this hearing saying, oh, see, the family knew, the family were in on it. I still think what they said about the family was very flimsy, and I'm going to tell you why here. I'll tell you what they said, and then I'll tell you why I think it's BS. Blair basically asked the detectives, David was known to Celeste's family, right? He said, yeah. I said, after the missing persons report, Celeste's parents allowed Celeste to live away from home in May 2024 with her aunt in the same city that David lived in. And the detective said yes. Now, I thought that was a very clever misdirection. She tried, the way she worded it, tried to make it seem like, see, she let David go and live in she let Celeste go and live in Los Angeles with David, right? That was the way she worded it. She let him go live in Los Angeles where David lived with her aunt. It was almost like playing shuffle with certain words. Because just because she went to live in Los Angeles with her aunt doesn't mean that she was given permission to live with David. Permission to live in the same city with David when this girl's been sneaking out, lying to the parents for years, getting secret cell phones they don't know about. They're trying to make it seem like the parents signed a permission slip for their minor daughter to go and live with David, and that is not true. That is misinformation, and the way that it was spun, I think, is out of line. So really, they said that Celeste, for whatever unrelated reasons, they didn't say why, they didn't say it had anything to do with David, but Celeste went to live with her auntie in the Los Angeles County area, not Hollywood, not West Hollywood, not in the vicinity of David's house, not in David's house. She was living with her auntie in the Los Angeles County area. That's a big area, okay? But everybody is going to now put that out there and say, see, the family said that she could go and live with David. Not true. But I could see what she was doing. And look, fair play to Blair. She's doing the best she can with a bad situation to try and give the man a defense, which everyone deserves a defense at the end of the day, even though this guy looks to me to be a monster. But at the end of the day, everyone deserves a defense. And I think that what actually ended up happening after that was we kind of saw her twisting things to make it seem like there was more family complicity than there actually was. They went on to say aunts and cousins knew about the relationship, yes? Now, here's the clever misdirection. Blair said at the start David was known to Celeste's family. Didn't say parents, said known to the family. And then they said aunts and cousins knew about the relationship. And they said yes. Now, look, I don't know the ages or the backgrounds of the aunts and cousins. You're more likely to tell your sibling about a little secret illegal relationship you've got going on than maybe your parents who are going to be judgmental and step in. Some people have got that relationship with aunts and cousins. I've got uncles that are, closer in age to me. It depends what your family tree looks like, right? I thought that was clever misdirection. David was known to Celeste's family. Yep. Did aunts and cousins know about the relationship? Yes. They said, did David attend church with Celeste's family? And David would pick Celeste up from the family and take her on dates at the mall. That was a yes, but here's the thing, and I talked about this earlier. Saying David attended the church with the family makes it sound like Celeste's whole family was all there with David. Oh, this is our boy David. Remember in that message that was going around yesterday that was apparently from the neighbor that said, they were showing David and Celeste off in the community. They all loved him. They loved each other. I couldn't imagine him killing her. Now, I think that's nonsense, but I think they've put that out there to muddy the waters. But listen carefully. David attended church with the family. That to me could mean they just simply attended the same church. They could have easily gone completely separately. David and Celeste could have been the only ones, or David, Celeste and her cousin could be the only ones that actually knew there was a relationship. David could be sitting 5 rows back, giving Celeste a little wink when nobody's looking, and that's it. That doesn't necessarily mean that they were all welcoming David into the community open arm like we were led to believe. And then I feel like Blair basically attached those two things together. David attended church with the family and would pick Celeste up from the family house and take her on dates to the mall. They didn't say that he would knock on the family door and bring her out and shake hands with everybody in the family and give them birthday gifts, the type of nonsense that we were seeing in that post going around. All they said was David attended the same church with the family. Doesn't mean that they were all together hand in hand, and David would pick her up from the house and take her on dates. Well, we know that David would try and pick her up in the middle of the night with his security guard secretly trying to kidnap her. So that doesn't mean anything as far as the family being friendly. That doesn't mean that the parents condone the whole thing. And I'm very...
Yeah, but still, if the parents knew or had an inclination that she was hanging out with him and anything more than a friend, actually, I'm going to be honest with you, 13-year-olds shouldn't even be a friend with somebody who's like 18, 19. So, again, I'm not saying this is a parent's fault, but, like, we got to start looking at the parents or the family to be like, how did y'all not do something?
suspicious, and I've got to give her credit as a lawyer. She worded it well, and she definitely made it seem very much like there was a lot of complicity. Wrongfully, in my opinion. They would go on to say David took Celeste's family to Six Flags. Family makes it sound like the whole mum, dad, cousins, brothers, sisters, everybody was at Six Flags. As far as I'm aware, it was just a sister. It was just her sister, right? And you might have your little secrets with your sister. Your sister might know about your secret older boyfriend. Maybe not your parents, maybe not your older aunties, your older higher level guardians. But again, she kept saying, oh, the family knew. And then she would focus on like one relationship. Oh, David took Celeste's family members of Celeste to Six Flags, right? Whoa, what, just the sister? And then they said the Vegas trip. Celeste's adult sister was aware of the relationship, right? And that adult sister went to Vegas with them. And then basically the detective interjected and said, well, accompanied them to Vegas, went with them isn't right. She went in a different car at a different time. She stayed elsewhere in a different hotel. Doesn't really, she was in Vegas at the same time. That doesn't even necessarily mean that, you know, it said that they had apparently met up in Las Vegas. That could have been one or two times that they met up, and that could have been a sister that kind of was knowing a little bit about the relationship, keeping it hush-hush. But the idea is like the family were all aware, they're all going on a big family vacation to Vegas. The way she presented it was genius, but I saw through it. From there, okay, they said Celeste's school friends know about it, right? And they said yes, but again, they were both posting pictures on social media. David had all these secret clandestine pictures of like Celeste's arm in the picture. Of course the school friends knew, the teacher knew. This was like I don't want to say like an open secret, but like word had got out, and that doesn't mean that everybody was complicit and played it. There was clearly a lot of deceit going on, especially on David's behalf, but also partly Celeste was deceiving people too. Arguably she had been deceived by David as well. But that did definitely make me wonder to what extent like is, you know, to what extent is, like, are they kind of reframing a lot of this stuff to try and make it seem like something it wasn't? I'm not convinced. Just because there was just because they put a lot of emphasis on notarized, all right? Do your research into that. But they were kind of, that was like supposed to be like this smoking gun. But the reality is, that could have been forged. It could have been genuine, but they could have been lied to about the boyfriend's age. They could have said, oh yeah, my boyfriend's family's rich, he wants to go on this family trip to London and he's only 16. She could have said, oh yeah, he's getting his parents to sign a notary form as well for permission. Easily, all types of lies could have been told. So I really don't think that it was fair to characterize the parents like that, and the parents were in court for this to be read.
So the parents
but as far as I'm aware, they don't.
Right? So the parents, you know, listen, at some point we got to require parents to be parents. You can't just be signing shit. You got to be up in your daughter or your son's business.
Speak English, so they might not have understood as it happened. But anyway, after that, they said they went through social media searches. They identified pictures of Celeste and David online. They basically kind of like, Blair tried to make this point that like, oh, there were images that were basically shared publicly by David and Celeste. So it wasn't this big secret. Like, they were out there publicly. People knew that they were together. And it was kind of a bit flimsy, but they also said, oh, there was pictures of them online from Discord. They were gaming a lot. They were gamers. That's how they met. They met gaming, all this kind of thing. And again, like, I just feel like it was, I feel like they thought it was going to be more compelling than it was. From there, basically the detective said, look, I can't verify all the photos on social media. I can only verify the photos that like we've taken off of the, what's it called?
Celebrate.
Off of his own devices. Like the items that they had taken off of his devices were essentially like, you know, those were the things that they were relying on in court, and like all the stuff on social media, the stuff on Reddit, the stuff on Discord, the detective basically said, look, that's not stuff we can verify, we don't rely on that. So a lot of the stuff Blair was relying on didn't meet the standard of proof that a detective would actually want to basically put it out there. Now, after this, we would basically hear that apparently, and this was pretty damning, and now Blair's putting this out there as evidence in favor of David, but I don't think this helped him. If anything, this just threw everyone else under the bus. But she basically said to the detective, who confirmed that David's management team all went with David and Coachella, with David and Celeste. And I thought they said that Celeste went to Coachella, but I didn't think that that was true. So that was a little bit confusing to me. But obviously, we know that David's management team was at Coachella, and we saw a lot of pictures. I talked about the pictures the other day about how Josh Marshall had his kids at Coachella backstage with David. I see Josh Marshall and them doing a little privacy complaint on the video, right? We're way ahead of you. We already blurred everything out that was personal to you guys, right? You don't have any right to have your video of you guys flexing your watches and laughing about the situation to be private. You guys are public figures and you put that out on Ziv Tamir's page. But anyway, we'll deal with that separately, all right? Those guys are absolute losers, all right? But anyway, from there, okay, we ended up hearing, this was crazy. I'm not going to say the name, but they mentioned somebody in the industry by name. I wrote the name down, all right? I wrote your name down. They basically said people in the industry, a music producer, went out socially with David and Celeste together. So whoever that was, you're going to be in big trouble. So while Blair was kind of doing that thing, I noticed that
music producer. Who could that be?
David looked down. They brought up the Fonda Theatre, and again, they tried to bring up all this damning stuff that doesn't look good for David, but like as if it was in his defense. So they basically said, oh, well, Celeste sat in between David's family, his siblings at the Fonda Theatre with his management team. Everybody knew, everybody accepted their relationship. It was kind of like, bruh, this isn't helping. This is just throwing everybody else under the bus, and it really, cool. If you want to just cook a bunch of other people along with him, that's cool, but like, I'm not really sure that that's really going to help you too much. So, interestingly, one of the craziest things that came up is they actually said that Blair basically said that Celeste, and there was proof that Celeste had previously committed domestic violence against David. A tiny little 13-year-old had apparently committed domestic violence against David. And now Beth objected to this. Blair said it shows a lack of malice, planning, and laying in wait. References to prior domestic violence.
Yeah, so they're not counteracting the murder charges. There's just the underage charge and also the stalking charge, lying in wait.
Apparently incidents in 2024 and 2025 where Celeste had been violent towards David, but the judge said, look, for this proceeding, this is a probable cause hearing. It's not relevant, and we don't need to include that. You can bring up these specific incidents in trial, but you can't really get to it now. Now, to be honest, I've been talking for a very long time. I'm not going to wrap up the video, but what I might do is just like do a little lap and just have a little stroll, because to be honest...
All right. Okay. This trial is going to be really interesting. Obviously, I think he has some potential defenses to say, well, if the parents are consenting, how is this illegal? Now, the big thing is going to be the murder, right? The big thing is going to be the murder. Obviously, we really don't think he's not going to get cooked on everything else. We think he's going to get cooked on everything. But you know, the big thing they're going to try to get is this murder charge to stick. How do you explain her last messages to you? How do you explain that her phone tracks to your house? How do you explain that you leave the area sometime afterwards, but you claim you don't know where she's at? How do you explain that she never sent another message again in her life? It's a lot for him to explain.
I can't effing be friends with you. You were with Neo and Asia, bro. Find a date, I can see you. She's pressuring him. So they give all these examples of all these times when they're like, oh, look, you were pressuring to see them. And they basically went on to say, explain why I can't see you before Singapore. David's like, my parents are here. I want to have a in-person conversation. So it sounds like really... he was saying, like, I want to tell my parents what I got going on with you, really. So I wonder whether the parents knew or they didn't know at this point about the age, and that he wanted to actually reveal the situation that was going on. I don't know. But that's what he said. I want to have an in-person conversation. And then Celeste replied, she was on his ass. She said, I need proof that your parents are there. Flights, or you're lying. I saw other people in your house. And then David said, they get here on Thursday, but I can't do tomorrow. Why do we need to meet in person before I'm back? I can see you tomorrow. She replied, I can see you tomorrow. I can dead ass go to Riverside too. She said, we need to talk in person, please, man. David said, no. Celeste said, you have one more chance to tell me the truth. You're hurting me. I don't know if you've ever been told this. It said, no, bro, cut this shit. I'm seeing you today. And David was like, okay. And basically, there was some other stuff that came up, but I'm actually not going to say it, just to be careful, just to be more careful. So basically, after all this, Blair starts questioning the detective and saying, well, you couldn't confirm if Celeste actually wrote the message. You know, when Celeste said, girly pop, I'm almost at your door, open the door, I'm almost there. They said, well, she wasn't there when she sent that, so you can't prove that she was there. And they said, oh, you can't prove that David was in his address, in his home. And the detective's like, well, we could triangulate his phone to his address. And they were like, yeah, but you couldn't tell if he was inside or outside, right? Like, that was some gotcha. And they was like, yeah, well, I mean, that's the address. Like, that's where the car was. That's where, like, she was ultimately found. Like, that's basically, it is what it is. So after that, they basically went back and forth. She was sort of saying, oh, you can't prove that he was in the property. They said he was playing a VR video game with 2 other people right before she arrived. And they were trying to use that as a way to say, oh, you know, there was no lying in wait. It was just, they was playing VR and she came over. He wasn't lying in wait. He stopped playing the game and went and spoke to her. Or not. Like, who knows what happened? You can't prove that he ever even spoke. He wasn't even in.
Okay. All right. I think that's enough. We'll see how this goes at trial. Traplo Ross, thank you for your amazing reporting. And also, obviously, we have Lauren Collins. She's also in court as well. We'll be using her recaps as well. So we'll see what's going to happen. But if you're asking me, our official prediction is that he will be found guilty of first-degree murder. All right?